Brothers and sisters, as you know, I often speak about my farm in Lower Chittering and all the various projects I've been working on. The farm was an amazing gift from God, and over these last 10 years has brought me great joy, satisfaction, and consolation. Then suddenly in 2023, things took a dive. A relatively warm and dry autumn and winter was topped off with a wild pig invasion over many months that upturned soil and tree roots across the orchard. Such was their cunning that the government-sponsored pig hunter couldn't outsmart them with his traps. Following a nearly 30 degrees Celsius day on the last day of winter, we had a hot and dry spring, and finally came the scorching summer of 23-24. Starting with 44.2 degrees on the 31st of January, we've since had one day over 46, 2 days over 45, a further 4 days over 44, 1 day over 42, and 2 days over 41, giving a total of 11 days between 41 and 46 degrees in the last 24 days. This is unheard of in the valley. In prayer last Sunday, after having battled for weeks to try to save the orchard and gardens from death, Jesus said to me, "Set your face like flint." Brothers and sisters, as with all of God's gifts, we must be prepared for the day when God asks us to give them back. At that moment, we're faced with a number of questions. Have we become inordinately attached to God's gifts? Have we come to love more the gifts of the giver rather than the giver of gifts? Have we forgotten the words of Job, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord"? Brothers and sisters, I'll ask you one final question, which I'm sure you will all answer yes to. Has God ever taken back from you something very precious that He'd previously given you? A child perhaps, a beloved spouse, your dream job, your dream home, your farm. We see in today's first reading Abraham being put to the test to see whether he has prepared himself to give back to God the very thing that he holds most precious, his son. Not only was it a son in the ordinary sense of the word, but a son given in miracle as a gift by God, a son from whom would supposedly sprout bountiful generations. And then God asks for him back. Why? Because our faith is not of this world. Our faith is something that leads beyond the end of our life and the end of this world. Yet it is through that very same life that we live in this world that we gain entry into the next life, eternal life. Brothers and sisters, God is always calling us to eternal life, and He does it through the very things of this world in which we live. But because of our fallenness and the fallen state of the world, we're often at risk of being trapped in the very thing He's gifted us with to lead us to eternal life. As I said earlier, we can end up more in love with the gifts of the giver rather than the giver of gifts. In today's gospel, we see Jesus give a most precious spiritual gift to Peter and James and John. There are multiple reasons for this gift. Jesus firstly wanted to show them that there is something more than just this life. He then wanted to alert them to the fact that the gifts they are being given in this life are ultimately intended to lead them to eternal life, not to a so-called prosperity in this life on earth. He then wanted to show them the beauty of heaven so that they're able to let go of their attachment to the beauty on earth. And finally, which you've probably already heard many times, he wanted to show them eternity so that when faced with the scandal of the cross and their own suffering, they would be able to recall the ultimate end shown in the Transfiguration, and thus be able to bear the cross as it falls. When we see Peter reacting with the words, "It is wonderful for us to be here," we can see how Jesus was giving him the grace to overcome his attachment to the beautiful Sea of Galilee, where he saw endless beautiful sunsets, where he felt the cool breeze on his skin, where he swam on those hot days. Having seen the divine encounter, Peter would soon be able to choose to follow the dusty road of the cross rather than return to the beautiful sea. So, brothers and sisters, when we are faced with God asking for our earthly gifts back, let us also recall that at the Transfiguration, God the Father said of Jesus, "This is my beloved." Jesus is the Father's most precious love, and yet he gave him away for a time, allowing him to be humbled by his incarnation, torture, and death on a cross. Such was his love for us. There is no more precious gift that the Father could give us. Brothers and sisters, in a way, we've all had our transfiguration moments, spiritual gifts from God to help us to see all the other precious earthly gifts he gives us in the right perspective. We must always strive to keep those spiritual gifts before our eyes so that we don't fall into the trap of wanting the earthly gifts more. As we journey to Easter, let us set our faces like flint, ready to accept all the challenges of life, ready to give back to God when he asks everything that he has already given us, including our earthly life, so that on that great and glorious day there'll be nothing to hinder us from receiving that greatest of all gifts, eternal life, where with Abraham and Isaac and Peter, James and John, we too will be glorified in the same way that Jesus was on that day on Mount Tabor.